Welcome to Inside Sponsorship, the show that provides sponsorship professionals with advice, insights and news so they can maximise their commercial programs and achieve best practice.
Rights holders and venues across the world of sports are on a constant quest to enhance the spectator experience at events and for those watching remotely by adding entertainment elements such as concerts, fan zones and enabling more access to star athletes. Taylor Swift's pre-race concert at the 2016 US Grand Prix, the theatre-style lighting deployed at the ATP World Tour Finals in London and, of course, the Super Bowl halftime show are all examples. There are also many examples of new entertainment events built around a sports element, including Andy Murray Live, an evening of music and exhibition tennis, and the Kellogg's Tour of Gymnastic Champions, a 36-city tour of US Olympic gymnasts designed to capitalise on the team's success at Rio 2016. And the NFL and Cirque du Soleil, meanwhile, have partnered to create a major showcase installation in Times Square, due to open next month. All of that is the trend of the greater fusion of sports and entertainment, which is trend number 4 in Nielsen Sports Commercial Trends in Sport 2017. I'm your host, Daniel Oyston, and welcome to episode 46 of Inside Sponsorship. And joining me on this episode to talk about that trend is Rebekah Stevens, Vice President, Global Brand and Sponsorship Consulting at Nielsen Sports. Now, before we hear from Rebekah, it's always awesome to hear from you guys, the listeners. It really is cool when we get an email or a LinkedIn with a message and hear about where you work, what you're up to, and how much you like the show. Of course, that then means that you get a shout out. And the first shout out goes to Mark Rogers, who works at MR Consulting out of Dallas, Texas. And he wrote, "Hi Daniel, recently I found your podcast and website. They are a great insight from you and your team. Plus the guests you have are spot on. I work mainly in outdoor sports and marketing and sales, which includes sponsorship. More people need to listen to your podcast and read your blog posts. Keep up the good work." Very kind. Thank you, Mark. And for those of you that know me, know that I'm a keen mountain biker, and Mark and I were chatting on LinkedIn, and Mark also has a history in mountain biking, having once owned a team, and he knows my local trails, and his team also had a local rider from Sponserve HQ's hometown, Canberra, Australia. Very cool, a very small world. And the second shout out goes to Patrick Collins. Patrick is head of sponsorship sales for 6-day cycling at Madison Sports Group in London, and that event won BT Sports Industry Award 2017 for Entertainment Experience of the Year. Patrick connected with me on LinkedIn to let me know he is a new listener of the show. Thanks for tuning in, Patrick, and great job on the award for you and the team. Well done. Now, that was quite a serendipitous shout out because the 6-day cycling event is exactly what this show is focusing on, and that's the greater fusion of sport and entertainment. And to find out more, taking a look at the website, it says the lights get turned down and the music turned up as 6-day combines the very best in track cycling with an incredible party atmosphere. Expect the action to come thick and fast as our track centre DJ keeps the party going before, during and after the racing. It does look very cool, and I'll post a link and a video to it in the show notes at sponserve.net so you can go and check it out for yourself. Whenever we welcome a Nielsen staff member on the show to discuss one of their commercial trends, Mark Thompson, Sponserve's managing director, also blogs about the topic, but through specifically the lens of what that trend means for the sponsorship industry. And this time around, Mark outlines how the greater fusion of sports and entertainment is actually a new horizon for sponsorship, and how, whether you're a brand or a rights holder, you can capitalise on it. Here's Mark. Mark Thompson, you like music?
I do like music.
What's your favourite song? If you had to listen to a song forever on repeat, what would it be?
Forever.
Forever.
Wow. Mate, I'm really eclectic, right? I've got a massive mix. I'm going to say Africa by Tata.
Oh, it's a good song, that.
Yeah.
My kids love that song. They know pretty much all the words. Yeah. We won't get you to sing it.
No.
Clearly you're a sports lover. What about when those two things come together, music and sport?
Well, I mean, there's not too much more in the world that gives me more pleasure than that I can actually talk about on the podcast. So that's the holy grail for me.
And we're here to talk about the fusion of sports and entertainment, which is trend number 4 in Nielsen Sports report on commercial trends in sport for 2017, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
What are some of the statistics around sports and entertainment coming together, fusing?
Yeah, well, so far through this series, we've talked about lots of interesting things. This for me I had the most fun writing this blog because the statistics that came out of it, the way it sort of combines a lot of things we've spoken about, it's all starting to make sense to me.
And you weren't distracted by your mate hosing the dirt outside the window?
No, I did this late at night, so I couldn't see.
So what piqued your interest about it? What caught your eye?
A couple of big stats. So 25% of the US population have attended a music event at or connected to a sporting event.
Have you ever?
Yeah.
What? I was struggling to think of one that I might have attended.
No, well, you've been to the AFL Grand Final.
Does that count?
Yeah, because that post the Grand Final, they have the concert in the field.
Yeah, I went on for a little kick in the corner before we got mobbed by the crowd.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Righto. Okay.
And then the biggest thing was 16% attended a music performance connected to a sporting event, of which 46% did not actually go to the sporting event.
They're more attracted to the entertainment.
More attracted to the entertainment, and that's drawing their attention more than the actual sporting event. So for me, this is a new horizon.
So we've got entertainment, music mostly, and sports fusing together. There's a reasonable percentage of people that are attending both at the same time, or even some that are attending that musical event attached to or entertainment event attached to a sporting event, but don't really care too much for the sport.
Yeah, think about like sort of your tailgating parties where they've got live music, or down our local, the Brumbies, you could just hang out in Batty Street there and listen to the man on his guitar. And not actually go into the Brumbies.
Or there's a Cookie Monster playing the saxophone outside the MCG on the walk back to the Melbourne a lot of the time. But considering that, what does that mean for the sponsorship space?
Look, on the last entry to this series, we talked about the changing attention spans, forcing rights holders to rethink. For me, this is Exhibit A of that rethink. And the results are huge. Look at the statistics. So it basically exposes, it sort of helps monetize a huge amount of opportunity for rights holders. So, think about the diversity and engagement opportunities that these different pieces of content help bring, the broader sets of rights that they can commercialise, the opportunities to generate more value for sponsors and audiences alike. So the engagement on both sides of the fence, this is the pinnacle of engagement. And then the chance to grow and own an otherwise unreachable fan base. Because as we saw there, you're looking at a 46% of 16% not actually attending the event. They're people that you're not going to get the attention of just by running a sporting event.
Yeah, correct. Yep. Otherwise they'd be there anyway. So there's some broad headlines, the diversity of engagement, broader sets of rights, and some opportunities and chances to grow. They're the headlines in terms of the opportunities that are presented. How can rights holders use those opportunities specifically?
So the generation of this content, it gives rights holders the chance to broaden the rights they offer. So, the true mix of content helps to engage a genuinely diverse audience, so like a genuine diversity in your audience, bringing newly engaged people in front of partners that otherwise you wouldn't be able to hold their attention. And then the commercial opportunities that follow through on that are, you can have different categories depending on the sporting content or the entertainment piece. You can have more engagement opportunities. You can offer partners upsells to be part of those other bits and pieces. You can mix and match your sort of inventory however you like, but looking to use the pulling power of rights holders to access that audience is still something that's never going to leave. What you've now got is this different piece of content that's added to your bow. Yeah,
and it was interesting, maybe 6, 7, 8 episodes ago we had Dan Frystack from CDW on the podcast, and we touched on this because we were talking about how rights holders are starting to buy up the property around the precincts of their sporting venues so that they can expand their horizons with entertainment, which will sometimes, but other times not, be actually attached to a sporting event on the same day, and what sort of opportunities there were to engage a rights holders brand with those people that are coming onto the precinct who might not normally be engaged. So you might be able to leverage them up into being paid members or free tickets to a game to give them some tastes and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not new in the US, but I mean, look at the new White Hart Lane. The amount of free open space that they've incorporated into that new build is specifically for this reason. Yeah,
and Parramatta Stadium in the west of Sydney, when it's due to be open middle next year, maybe. I'd have to check that. Ability to roll in outdoor exhibitions like boat shows and things like that really open up the entertainment opportunities outside of just sporting events. So you spoke about what rights holders can do with those opportunities. Yep. What about brands? What about sponsors?
Look, I'll start by saying that sports sponsorship is not for every brand. It might not be aligned to their core values or their objectives, but what can't be denied is the pulling power of the rights holder, is the engagement of the rights holder audience, and it is something that has to be appealing even to those that might not be interested in sports. So, I'm a true believer that sponsorship in general is genuinely the best way to access audiences that traditional marketing and advertising can't cut through. So depending on the rights available, the demographic involved, the objectives of the brand, the entertainment content might be more suitable than the rights. So therefore the brands now that might not have an appetite for sponsoring sport suddenly have an appetite for sponsoring sport without having to touch the sport content. I remember when I was working, at the Brumbies, we were talking to a sponsor once and really interested in our brand and our place in the community, especially our proximity to government. But they ended up falling through because they were scared that a player would break his arm and the bone of his arm would stick through their logo on the sleeve. Seriously.
Have you ever seen a player break their arm at that level? As in, what's that bone? The humerus?
Yeah, compound fracture.
Yeah.
No, but that's why they said no. They just didn't have the risk appetite for.
Yep.
It was probably more to that, right? That was just what they told us. But you can think, if you're putting your brand reputation in the hands of young, men, sometimes can be scary, especially for people that don't understand the market they're going to. And this was a global brand based in Europe. So I then look at that example. You pull it back. If we were offering just as engaging content to just as big an audience in and around the football match, which was the attractive part for these guys, there's an opportunity. So using the entertainment content to draw the attention to the brand through aligning the available benefits with the stated objectives provides a whole new layer of engagement, even if not coupled with sport.
So we've spoken about some of those key stats. Around 25% of the US population have attended a musical event or connected to a sporting event. 16% have attended a musical performance connected to a sporting event, of which 46 didn't even attend the sporting event. You spoke about what does that mean for us, and then how can rights holders use those opportunities, and then how brands and sponsors can use those opportunities. Underline it for us. Give us a final word. Why is that all important? Pull it together.
Well, it magnifies the power of sporting rights holders and how that power is growing. So rights holders aren't just sporting teams anymore. We've got a client here in Australia who bats way above their weight. I sat down with Terry Reader from the Brisbane Broncos. We'll give him a shout out because he's doing a great job up there. But they don't talk about themselves as a football team. They talk themselves about as a media company. These guys are producing content to engage their audience, and predominantly through media opportunities. So the big ones are more akin to media companies with massive reach, huge engagement opportunities, very diverse through entertainment or through sport. They've got huge star power that they can draw upon as well to create more content within that content. So, think about you've got a concert with Katy Perry in the car park, and then
Toto,
and then all your injured players or former players or whatever floating around. Like, that's just a special environment, right? And so, the report mentions that sporting events are likely to become multi-day festivals, culminating in the match or sporting content, providing brands with nearly endless ways of finding engaging ways to hit those audiences and cut through. And what's really fun, and for me, the opportunities are only going to get better, is the the opportunity for trial and error in this space. You know, you can try something. It's not the end of the world if it doesn't pay off and comes back, particularly if there's multiple opportunities for a term.
Yeah, and you're coming from a strong base, which is your sporting event,
Correct.
which has been successful for a long time. Now, Africa's your favourite song. I said we wouldn't get you to sing it.
No,
I shouldn't have denied the opportunity. I'll put it out there now. Would you like to sing it on the way out?
No, Mara. But tell me what your favourite song is, because I saw a Facebook post of yours the other day which said that when you're driving alone, singing a song at full freight, you felt like you could have the backing of a big band.
I am a fantastic singer when there's no one around and the music is up very loud.
There's no one around right now, and I'm sure you can turn the music up.
I'm enjoying a little bit of Elton John Rocket Man at the moment. I've been playing that a lot in the car, and we won't sing that. So thanks for joining us.
No worries.
I know it gets said a lot that we're in a period of great change and fragmentation of audiences, and that those audiences have short attention spans. None of that's debatable. However, even though we know that, both rights holders and brands are still navigating that changing space, and they also need to be constantly evolving and looking at new ways to deliver value on multiple fronts. Fusing sport and entertainment has shifted to become not just about halftime shows at grand finals, playoffs and Super Bowls, but something much deeper and more engaging. And joining me on the show to help us understand the trend and how we can navigate it is Rebekah Stevens, Vice President Global Brand and Sponsorship Consulting at Nielsen Sports. Rebekah manages client relationships and consulting engagements for major brands and sports entertainment properties. She's very well placed to help us understand the trend, having worked with Fortune 500 brands across automotive, CPG, financial services and insurance, major sports teams in the NFL, NBA, MLB and NASCAR, as well as national governing bodies, multi-sport venues, major event host committees, state tourism boards and gaming and esports platforms. Here's Rebekah. Rebekah Stevens, welcome to the show.
Hey, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
We always kick off with a few easy icebreaker questions just to ease you into the interview and also to help the audience get to know you a little bit better. Tell us about the first ever concert you went to.
Well, so I know that's supposed to be easy, but I actually didn't go to that many concerts growing up, which is probably not something I should admit to given my current line of work. I think the first big arena concert that I went to was actually Bruce Springsteen. So it may not have been that early, but was a good one at least.
Very good. And following on that same line of questioning, because we're here to talk about the fusion of sports and entertainment, tell us about the first sporting event you ever went to.
Also a tricky one, but for a different reason. So I'm not sure I actually remember my first sporting event. My dad has had season tickets to University of Michigan football since he was a student there, undergrad and law school. So I've been going to Ann Arbor for football games for as long as I can remember. Before we were even old enough to sit through the games, we would go down to the tailgate, hang out in Ann Arbor during the games, regroup with the family that had gone to the game afterwards. So I don't honestly remember my first one, but the most memorable one, maybe I'll go with that, was probably the 1997 Michigan-Ohio State game. So for those that aren't familiar, I was there with my dad, my sister, and my brother, and Michigan capped off its undefeated season and went on to win the national championship. So if not first, an early memorable one.
Outstanding. I like your dad very much because I'm a firm believer that it's the father's or the parents' responsibility to indoctrinate their children into the same sports fanaticism and following. So I commend your dad. He sounds as though he's done his job as far as I'm concerned.
He excelled then. He excelled.
Because I'm of the view that the children should grow up, just like you did, not knowing any different. It's not a choice. You're born into it.
That was exactly it.
Rebekah, tell us about your journey, your employment journey so far, including your current role, and a little bit about what it involves.
Sure. So actually, I'm not sure about your past guests, but I have a fairly traditional consulting background. So most of my career was not in the sports and entertainment space. I came straight out of undergrad and joined Boston Consulting Group, was based in Chicago at the time, doing traditional strategy and management consulting across a variety of industries. You name it, air fresheners to industrial tires. I left there to do my MBA at Stanford, which is what actually brought me out to California. Geographically, I got stuck at that point. and graduated and went to KKR Capstone, which for those that aren't familiar is the operations team at the private equity firm. So again, consulting skill set, but working with the portfolio companies of the private equity firm. And although neither of those roles really directly had anything to do with sports or entertainment, it was always a part of my life, professionally, personally. Actually going back to undergrad, I did my honors thesis on the economic impact of the Olympic Games. And then throughout the years in Chicago and in San Francisco, volunteered for a couple of, so far, unfortunately, unsuccessful Olympic bids. And, even just while at business school within a variety of sports-related projects, and did an internship. So it would have been late 2014, I was doing some work with the San Francisco 2024 Olympic bid and was connected with who is my now boss. So he was working at a company called Rebekah at the time, which was later acquired by Nielsen, starting their consulting group. Quick background for those that aren't familiar. So Rebekah was really a preeminent sports and entertainment research company at the time. Did a lot of work in media valuations and sponsorship exposure and research around fans, and had just made a strategic decision to try to build and grow a consulting practice. And so for me, it seemed like a perfect fit. It was the opportunity to combine my consulting experience with an industry that I'd always been passionate about, and also had the added benefit of being a startup and helping build a business. So long story short, 3 years later, I'm still here. As I mentioned, Rebekah was acquired by Nielsen in 2016, last summer, and I now am co-leading the consulting group in North America across the sports and entertainment practice, with a growing focus really on the broader entertainment industry. So in addition to sports, which was kind of the core business, a lot of time and focus being spent in music and esports in particular, working with both rights holders and brands that have large sports sponsorships and entertainment platforms.
We're going to focus on trend number 4 in Nielsen's Commercial Trends in Sport 2017, and it's a great segue what you're focusing on at the moment, because that trend is the greater fusion of sports and entertainment. Now, the report includes some key interesting stats. Can you just run us through them and set the scene for us a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. I think the name of the trend says it all. It really is how these two verticals and platforms are coming closer and closer together. And I think what it's coming out of is being, rights holders, regardless of their vertical, are being really pressured to drive growth in eyeballs and attention, forced to be a little more creative in terms of building the reach and the stickiness of their properties. And so with this fusion, they're ultimately able to attract new fan bases and retain existing fans. If you think about it, really, the halftime show is probably the first example of this happening. So, the high school band at the Friday night football game is a fusion of sports and entertainment. But we've seen these integrations really amplified over the past few years. So you asked about stats. I think one of them that stood out to me from our national fan research was just how pervasive the integration already is. So 25% of the U.S. population claim to have attended a musical event that took place at or was connected to a sporting event. And for me, that's interesting, but what's even more compelling is the realization that it's actually driving changes in behavior. So of those who went to a musical event that took place at the sporting event, 13% said they would not have attended the event were it not for the musical performance. And likewise, of those who went to a music event that was connected to a sporting event, 46% did not even attend the sporting event. So again, the root of the trend is just finding ways to grow and retain those fan bases, and this is obviously expanding fan bases to new audiences.
Very good. I think that there's lots of little comments and angles in there that you just covered off that we're going to dive into a little bit deeper later on. One of those right now was you were talking about halftime entertainment. Sports and entertainment isn't just about halftime entertainment. There are bigger opportunities than that you alluded to. How do sports rights holders fuse with entertainment well? What are the key things that they need to get right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. And you're absolutely correct. There's more than just the halftime show, although I wouldn't underestimate the value of a good halftime show. I think, hopefully I get this right, the Super Bowl, I think halftime show exceeded average TV viewership for at least the last 4 years, I believe. So that's kind of driving interest in that game as much as anything. But, to get back to the real question, I think the best examples are when they're truly fused events that you can't really tell if it's a sporting event or if it's entertainment. Both are equal factors in kind of driving fan experience. A couple of examples, come to mind. USA Gymnastics puts on a post-Olympic tour that is with its athletes following the Olympic Games. And it's part sport, it's part Cirque du Soleil, it's a music production, lights, costumes. It's really a fan engagement, additional monetization opportunity for the property itself. It's a ticketed event and creates a whole new platform for sponsorship. So I think, again, that's almost the extreme example of where you just don't know if it's sports or if it's music. One other one that comes to mind is the Miami Open, one of the premier tennis stops on the ATP and WTA tour, which is known, again, it's a sporting event, but when you ask somebody in the area why did they go to the event, as many people are going for the entertainment aspects as for the tennis itself. There's live music, there's a fashion component, there's celebrity chefs, et cetera. And so, I think it's when they enhance each other. They're not competing, they're really enhancing one another.
I wanted to ask a question around the gymnastics example that you gave just then, because where I live in Australia, the gymnastics isn't a high-profile sport. Australia doesn't generally do very well at the Olympics. So it only comes into our view once every sort of 4 years, maybe at the Commonwealth Games every 2 years, where we would do quite well. I'm curious about how the public embraces that event and attends. Is it something that needs to be pushed hard and sold, or is it something where the public, because of the entertainment experience and because of the profile of gymnastics in America, tickets just get sold and it's really well embraced? What's the situation?
Yeah, look, I imagine ticket sales vary market to market, so I can't speak to every market, but I went to the show in San Jose this past year after 2016. It was unbelievable. I mean, just fervent fan base. And granted, the U.S. had an unbelievable show at the Olympic Games, so they probably had the best promotion that they could have asked for in terms of T-Mobile Miles and the rest of the team's performance at the Games. But from the audience there, you could tell you had core gymnastics fans. You had, some particularly girls that, were in their leotards and, knew every move and knew every athlete. But you also had a lot of their families there, and everyone was just as into the show because it was an entertainment experience. I mean, if you like Cirque du Soleil, you're watching the best athletes on earth, but perform. So it very much extends, I think, the audience and the interest from, to your point, what's a fairly niche sport. And during the Olympic Games, yes, it's one of the most popular ones here, but it's still to understand the nuances of scoring and everything else. I think the entertainment side of it kind of broadens its reach when they come back and do such a tour.
It sounds really exciting. I'm curious about why other sports haven't executed the entertainment aspects even remotely. I look at a sport like football or soccer in some parts of the world, and particularly in Europe and the UK, they don't seem to focus on, well, I was going to say much entertainment, but even entertainment at all. Why is that? And do you think it's ultimately going to change for those sports that have not made an effort or resisted it for so long?
Yeah, it's a good question. I do think the success of this comes down to, and I'll probably be repetitive at this, but it comes down to being authentic to the sport and its fan base. And so, to your point, global football, or soccer as we refer to it, probably incorrectly here in the U.S., is so deep in tradition that, frankly, I don't think the on-field, in-game experience is likely to change very quickly. They have deep fan bases. They are selling out their stadiums. But all of that being said, I actually, not to disagree with you, but I actually think if you look at the sport more broadly, it is still connecting to entertainment in some ways. So, FIFA, and we can debate if esports falls into sports or entertainment, but it's at least a different format of the game. FIFA is heavily investing into the Interactive World Cup and trying to grow interest in their sport through esports and engagement in that way. Around the World Cup, there's always the release of the FIFA World Cup song, which, is a significant PR driver leading up to the World Cup. And, even on a week-to-week basis in the UK and in Europe, we are seeing entertainment aspects grow more in kind of the pre and post-game experience. Again, once you're in that venue, it's, pure traditional football. But outside, Manchester City, has developed really a pre-match entertainment zone, which includes live music, player appearances, community activities. So I think it's getting closer. I think it'll be one of the lagging sports if it ever, and I'm not sure it ever will get to the same level as, gymnastics tour. They're just different sports, different audiences. And I think maybe the last point on this one is the players themselves are also starting to bridge that gap a little bit, right? As we see players as not just athletes, but celebrities, and building social media profiles and, being brand ambassadors, particularly around kind of fashion brands and the like. I think the trend still applies. I just think it's manifesting itself in a different way.
What about for smaller rights holders? Because we don't generally see a lot of attempts by them to fuse their offerings with entertainment. Are they missing an opportunity? And if so, do they execute it well if they can't actually sign big name entertainment? Is there an opportunity for them to fuse their offerings with entertainment if they don't have the opportunity to sign that big headline band that draws people because they already have that following?
Yeah, I mean, my gut reaction is yes. I think there is still an opportunity there. I'm trying to think of a good example where it's happened, but I think the logic is the same as, the small rights holders still exist, even though they're small. I think what we'll likely see is similar scale engagements and activations. So no, you're probably not going to see Lady Gaga doing the halftime show for the small rights holder, but that doesn't mean that music and arts and culture and food and fashion and everything else that comes with entertainment can't be infused in the event. We already spoke to the gymnastics example, which I think would qualify in the world of NGB. It's large in the world of NGBs, but it's still a relatively small rights holder. Another example that comes to mind, actually, we just spoke briefly to esports. This time, if we think about, esports as a sport and certainly growing, but each kind of individual property is still fairly small. We're seeing a growing association between esports and the electronic music industry, with things like DJ appearances at pre and post parties associated with the live events. And so I think the opportunity is there. I think it's just about understanding who is your fan base, what is going to resonate with the fan base. The two examples above are kind of perfect conflicting examples in some ways. The esports fan would not be interested in a self-produced dance and lights show, and the gymnastics fan is probably not the target EDM demographic, but both of them are able to kind of find that niche entertainment audience or niche experience to enhance the fan experience.
Something you said earlier really piqued my interest, and I'm curious about your advice around this for some of those smaller rights holders. It's probably going to be applicable to bigger rights holders as well, but those smaller rights holders that maybe sitting in their office, they've got people around a board table, they're having their weekly meeting and they want to know how to grow their sport, get more people there, engage people. You're the consultant, you're the expert, but it would appear to me that comment that you made around the good ones are where you can't tell where one starts and one stops. Is that their starting point? How do we build an experience like that rather than trying to bolt things onto an existing offering?
Yeah, I think that's a great goal, and certainly would be a good mindset to start with. The question I would ask before I even get to that point is, where are our fans also spending their time? What else are they passionate about? What is their other passion point beyond our sport? And then once you've identified that, you already know you've got a fit from an audience perspective. Then to your point, how do we develop a logical experience or event or content, right? I think we're focused on live events here, but it's not limited to live events. How do we kind of create a platform or partnerships that have mutually beneficial opportunities for both parties.
Very insightful. I like that answer. Rebekah, mostly the fusion of sports and entertainment, as you alluded to a little bit earlier on, is occurring or has traditionally occurred around those big ticket items like Super Bowls and grand finals. Should rights holders be looking to make it more of a common experience week in, week out, rather than those peak events?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think my gut answer on that one is probably in line with the answer I just gave to kind of the smaller rights holder question. I think there is an opportunity for week in and week out. It's just going to be scaled proportionate to the event. The NFL does have halftime entertainment week in and week out, but nothing's on the scale of the Super Bowl, to use your example. So the key to me is that it still should be authentic and enhance the fan experience. If for a rights holder to achieve this, they need to start with less is more. That'd be my personal recommendation. So do it right and do it well. And over time, if it grows into a program and platform that makes sense week after week, then great, all the better. I think that's only going to enhance the authenticity of it. But don't start with that pressure of, I must have something at every event.
I think that's great advice. You just took the words out of my mouth. I think taking the pressure off yourself and growing it over a period of time rather than trying to deliver that big, huge experience that's a big shift for your audience is great advice. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but when sports and entertainment fuse, it would appear from the outside that it's often the sports rights holder driving that working relationship, i.e., this big artist is coming to play at our event. Should the broader entertainment sector be trying to take the lead more and look for opportunities themselves rather than what appears simply as being booked by the rights holder to turn up and play a gig?
Yes, absolutely. I think there's probably a logistics element where the big venues and the larger events are hard. It's harder to move a football game into a concert than to move a concert into a football game. So what you view it as may continue to seem like, the entertainment is getting dropped into the sporting event, if we use that example. But I do think that the promoters in the music industry are realizing the benefit of these types of events. We already spoke about how music events associated with a sporting event is growing attendance at sporting events. But the data also supports kind of the inverse of that these types of appearances are good for the artist. Sports fans are avid music fans. They're significantly more likely to listen to radio, download music or subscribe to the likes of Spotify and Apple Music, and pay to attend concerts. I believe the stat is in total that sports fans on average spend 23% more on entertainment than the general population. So wow. Again, reaching sports fans is good for, entertainment properties. Not to keep coming back to the Super Bowl, but for this one, it probably is the most tangible example. Nielsen SoundScan measures sales of music sales over time, and shows that the halftime performers regularly experience significant spikes in album sales and paid downloads following their halftime performances, which makes sense. They're reaching huge, 110 plus million people, in a given exposure. So certainly the benefits go in both directions.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting comment around particularly sports fans spending more on entertainment, and also the spike in the downloads. That's something I hadn't considered. One of the advantages of sports and entertainment fusing more is that the sports can potentially attract and engage either fringe fans or even those who aren't fans at all of the sport. It's a big opportunity because clearly ticket sales and memberships are important revenue streams for a lot of sports rights holders, and growing your database makes it more attractive to partners quite often. So how do rights holders go about actually converting those fringe or non-fans and trying to leverage them into more engagement around the rights holder?
That is an excellent question. Probably the holy grail, if you will. And, I won't claim to say that I know there's a one magic formula. But, to pontificate at least for a little bit, I think it's about meeting the consumer where they are and understanding what resonates for them. So we do a lot of fan research, as I mentioned, to understand fan profiles and motivators of fandom. And actually, through a large piece of global research, identified 7 distinct fan types. I won't try to go through all of them here, but to give you an example, they include groups like game experts who are really all about the sports. They're the ones that are keeping score during a baseball game. They're the ones you want on your trivia team to answer the obscure fact about who won the game in 1986. Exactly. You all know who they are, right? We all have friends who are those people. And then there's the connection fans who believe sports are intertwined with their social life, and they're all about bringing people together. And so one of the keys is actually, you mentioned databases and how do you kind of convert fans. The sooner a rights holder can capture this potential information through, ticket sales or on-site capture mechanism, and kind of identify fans, whether it's through surveying and the like, it can actually leverage this information to target messaging. So, in the example I just gave above, a game expert is not going to be interested in the entertainment elements of an event. And they don't need to be convinced, per se, to join or to become a better fan. While, the connection fan may have been the person that you actually originally enticed to your property because there was a concert, because they had some, entertainment factor that was social. It had nothing to do with the sport. And so how do you message to them around the next entertainment or the promotions that highlight the social scene at the event and group tickets and the like? So by understanding, first of all, which ones are even open to becoming fans, you can be very targeted. And among everybody that you can reach, who were those that only came to your event, for a particular reason, you can start to create programs that may entice them over time. And frankly, not everybody needs to be a game expert, right? From sponsorship receptive, it actually says there's a variety of fan types that are, very receptive to sponsorship. So those connection fans are just as valuable to you as a property as the game experts are.
Staying on that point, what's the variety of fans attending entertainment aspects of a sporting event? Are many of them actually not sports fans, don't have any interest in it at all? They're just there for the entertainment. And if so, considering they aren't sports fans, is there really, truly even much of an opportunity for that sports rights holder to engage and convert them? Or is it more that the rights holder should be focusing on attracting more people, regardless of whether they want to engage and be a fan of that sport, because they're really focused on adding value to the sponsors around the entirety of the event?
All of the above. Is that an answer?
That was D.
Or my favorite consulting answer, it depends. I think, a couple of the data points that I referenced earlier, I think do support the fact that the people coming to these events, to answer the first part, no, they're not all sports fans from the beginning, right? We know that there's a number that are only coming because of the music or the other entertainment factor. I do think there's the potential to grow fan bases by exposing fans or potential fans to a sport or property that they may not have previously been exposed to or had preconceived notions about what the experience or fan base would be like. So getting them in the doors, engaging them in some positive manner is the first step. I'll admit my own, and I probably shouldn't, but I had preconceived notions about motorsports and NASCAR. Talk about a property that does a great job of kind of on-site engagement of the fan and the like, that, the experience that I had when I first went on site was very different than what I'd envisioned as someone who'd seen, highlights on TV previously. And so I think not everyone's going to become a season ticket holder, right? And that doesn't necessarily need to be your goal, but I think the potential is there for higher engagement. The other thing I would consider is, maybe to the second half of your question, in some cases, properties actually are at capacity. They actually don't need more ticket buying fans. So part of what they're looking for in order to grow revenue are looking for, what are those new revenue streams, including how do we create new assets from a sponsorship perspective or new ticketed events that we can generate revenue from. And, the entertainment integrations have been highly successful in creating new sponsorable assets for current or new partners. So, I think I'd go back to kind of the all of the above answer. the last piece to think about is engagement on social media and using that as a platform to engage and to grow fan bases. Again, they may engage with your property not because they're a fan of your team, but because that particular artist or celebrity or entertainer does something through your platform. So again, they're building an affinity, even if it's not in the traditional sense of a fan for your sports team or the competition.
Focusing on the brands and the sponsors, is there any evidence of an uplift in, significant uplift in brand exposure, loyalty, or even return on investment for those sponsoring brands who are engaged in those entertainment aspects of the sporting events outside of what they might normally do with a rights holder, compared to their engagement and loyalty, exposure and return on investment prior to the event? Maybe similar to what you mentioned around entertainers seeing a spike in downloads and album sales?
Yes, I should say my it depends answer for this question, but the short answer
you only get to play
is,
that card once, Rebekah.
I only get that one once, sorry. Yes, I mean, look, I'm probably biased because I'm in the industry, but full transparency, we tell almost as many brands, well, I shouldn't say almost many, but we tell plenty of brands to get out of sponsorships as we do to get in, right? We kind of try to play the independent, objective third party. We are there to advise on what's best in terms of delivering their business objectives when we're working with brands. And the metrics that we look at vary, and the reason I give you an it depends answer is what ROI means in the sponsorship industry varies by the brand. It varies by what are their objectives. It varies by what industry they're in. It varies by kind of how they're going to measure return. But the types of things that we look at are brand exposure. And certainly if there's any type of on-site or media exposure, then the entertainment properties are adding to that, both in terms of absolute number and also to the previous point in terms of reach, because you may be reaching a broader or a slightly different audience. The second thing that we often look at are putting things like sponsorship trackers into market and understanding what is awareness of the brand, what is awareness of the brand sponsorship, and how does those who are aware of the sponsorship, how do their metrics on brand perception, consideration, purchase intent, recommendation go right down the traditional marketing purchase funnel? What are the deltas that we see there? And certainly from brands where there is an authentic engagement, where consumers perceive the brand fit, where there's positive attributes associated with the property that they're partnering with, you can see very significant uplifts on a lot of these key brand metrics. So that's true of the sponsorship industry in general, and I think entertainment is just one more manifestation of it, and another way for brands to kind of activate their brand and spread their message.
Rebekah, I was going to ask about whether you had any favourite examples of sports and entertainment fusing and why they were good, but I think you've given some fantastic examples and insights already, so you feel free if you want to add any more. But I also wanted to focus on, are there any examples that you can think of, without being too critical obviously, where fusing sports and entertainment has been attempted but it just didn't work?
It's a good question. Nothing specific is coming to mind, and to your point, if I don't want to throw anyone under the bus here, but in general, and everyone can probably think of their own example, I'd say it's the times where it just doesn't feel like it fits, and where it feels disjointed, like it was an afterthought. I think you used the words earlier today about it's an add-on rather than an enhancement, or even worse, where almost feels like it may be competing for fan attention. If you think about things happening at the same time that aren't necessarily something that would attract the same fan group, or, you have to make decisions. I'm not sure this is my most articulate answer here, but yeah, I think those are, if it feels disjointed, if it doesn't feel like an enhancement to the fans, and if at any point it feels like it's competing, I think those are the ones where it's not necessarily effective. It's neutral to potentially negative.
I think That answer makes complete sense, and it harks back to a couple of things that we spoke about before about, whether it enhances the experience and whether you can't tell where one starts and one stops, and then you speaking there about it not feeling like an afterthought or an add-on. I think that makes complete sense. While the trend that we've spoken about mostly focuses on sport, do you think there's much of an opportunity for non-sports rights holders to fuse with entertainment in the same way?
Absolutely. I actually even think, and we use it in our own business, we're using it today, I actually think the line between, frankly, sports and entertainment in some ways is itself a bit of a misnomer. As sports, frankly, is one type of entertainment. Others that more commonly referred to as entertainment, music, arts and culture, esports, games, movies, television. We could all go on. But so I think the idea of creating compelling fan experiences across entertainment platforms is what's behind this trend. And certainly it's been exemplified by focusing on sports because that is so clearly defined what it means. But there's no reason that these other different types of entertainment that I just spoke about can't make the same kind of investments in enhanced fan experiences, integrating passion points into singular and larger scale events.
Let's shift gears to the future. The report lists some dot points around potential future outlook, and one of those is a greater thirst from fans and brands for reality programming around big events. Can you explain what reality program means? Or reality programming, sorry? Yeah,
I'm not sure. We may have made that term up. I'm not sure, but I think it's about the peripheral content, and at least in my mind. I think it's about the peripheral content that fans find compelling. So fans are constantly trying to get closer to celebrities, and that could be the athletes, that could be musicians, actors and actresses. Frankly, social media does provide this glimpse into their lives that previously was really inaccessible. And one thing we found is behind the scenes content on social media is one of the most engaging content themes that we see coming from both the sports and entertainment space. And so when we refer to kind of this growth for reality programming, I think what we're talking about are really creating both short and long form content with this type of exclusive access to these celebrities. And it becomes an asset that rights holders can use to both continue to engage and grow their fan base, as well as, monetize from a sponsorship perspective.
Let's stay on the future outlook. Let's fast forward, say, 15 years. What does this space look like? Will the big name band, will the Foo Fighters be playing every time there's a stoppage in play?
If I could predict the next 15 years at the rate the industry is changing, I'd be very successful. But I'll take a stab at it and don't hold me accountable. I think from the perspective of this trend, I do think it's going to continue. I don't think it's just about adding more and more, interludes and, to your example, kind of music at each stoppage in play. I think people will get tired of that. You'll get pushback.
People love the Foo Fighters, though, Rebekah. People love the Foo Fighters.
Maybe that's the one exception. I think the trajectory is more along the lines of those integrated events that we've spoken about. I think it's going to be blurring of lines at individual events. And I think also if you think about rights holders more as kind of portfolio owners, I think we're going to see them having kind of a diverse suite of opportunities for fans and brands. And that will include sports, that will include entertainment. It's just going to be kind of more of a holistic ecosystem, if I had to guess. But 15 years is a very long time.
We'll have you back on the show in 15 years to see how it's all panned out.
Perfect.
Rebekah, if people want to get in touch with you, connect on social, etc., what can they do?
Sure. So they can reach out on LinkedIn. It's Rebekah Stevens, or email Rebekah is REBEKAH .Stevens, STEVENS @ Nielsen.com. or I'm sure if they get in contact with you, you'll find a way to pass it along. But I'm happy to get in touch, and it's a topic that's fun to talk about. So more than happy to help out where I can.
Outstanding. Rebekah Stevens, Vice President, Global Brand and Sponsorship Consulting at Nielsen Sports. Thank you so much for taking us inside the greater fusion of sports and entertainment.
Thanks for having me.
Great chat with Rebekah. I know she's been really, really busy with work and travel over the last couple of weeks, so I know we are all very appreciative of her finding some time to share her thoughts and insights on the greater fusion of sports and entertainment. That's about all we have time for in episode 46 of Inside Sponsorship. Don't forget to head to sponserve.net to read Mark's blog in detail or download Nielsen's Commercial Trends in Sport 2017 paper. Of course, if you aren't getting the blogs or the podcast direct to your inbox each week, then just shoot me an email or sign up at sponserve.net. And if you'd like a shout out on the show, just like Mark and Patrick, then get in touch and I will make that happen for you. If you want to connect with me, then you can do so on LinkedIn. Just search for Daniel Oyston or drop me an email at daniel@sponserve.net or on Twitter using the handle @sponserve. And of course, you can connect with Mark Thompson on LinkedIn or email at mark@sponserve.net. Don't forget that you can also follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter and Instagram. Just search for Sponserve. Until next time, I'm Daniel Oyston. Thanks for listening to Inside Sponsorship.
Thanks for listening to the show. For more episodes, blogs and resources, head to sponserve.net or search for Sponserve on Facebook, Twitter or LinkedIn.